Hey guys, thank you so much and welcome to the Game Your Future podcast, where we help gamers realize their full potential. And today I have a special guest for you. This is Johann McNeel, who is a longtime raid leader, Final Fantasy XIV player, and gradually transitioning careers. So, Johann, thank you so much and welcome. How are you?
I'm doing all right, Daniel. Yourself?
Doing very well. And so I know I've played quite a bit of Final Fantasy. I know you've played a lot of Final Fantasy, but for those that don't know, tell us a little bit what a Final Fantasy 14 raid leader is, what it's about, and how you play the game.
Sure thing. So I played Final Fantasy since September of 2010, and I am a very long time player. And in that time, I've led raid groups for Coils. I've led raid groups for all six Ultimate raids. And whether or not we were actually successful in some of our endeavors is an entirely different story, but we've all experienced the classic raid group explodes scenario.
Of
But
course.
through both the successes and the failures, I've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot of skills that I apply in my everyday career. Um, I've learned to be impartial, learned to make difficult decisions, and mostly I've learned punctuality, organizational skills, and whether or not it's time to make a hard decision.
It's those hard decisions that sometimes can get us. Can you give us an example, maybe like what's kind of a hard decision that you've had to make in Final Fantasy and how that's kind of helped you, in your career, maybe as far as making these kind of harder decisions.
Sure thing. So back when I was doing the Epic of Alexander, I was trying to get our group to progress a little more quickly and get ourselves at least an Onyx expansion clear. Because I started Ultimate rating, I want to say, in Shadowbringers. I was meaning to in Stormblood, but just never got around to it. I
Yeah.
was pretty lazy. And we had one particular individual. I obviously won't be sharing names or anything, but
Of
we had
course.
one particular individual who just wasn't quite as consistent as the rest. And I have a general policy of I'll try to work with you as much as I can before I make any sort of decision to replace. But what really did this in particular individual in was that they would always take regular 15-minute AFK breaks for unspecified reasons. And I tried talking to him. I tried telling him, "Hey, this has got to improve. We can't be doing this, and you're throwing away a good number of our polls when you're here anyway." And what really did them in was one day we had to sub them out because they were gone for whatever reason. But we made more progress with a sub than we did with the actual individual. And it was at this point that I'm like, okay, it's no longer just my time I have to consider. It's the time of seven other people I have to consider. So, and with that in mind, I then just messaged them saying, hey, listen, I appreciate you being willing to stick this out with us, but I think I'm going to have to go in a different direction. And what that taught me for my real world purposes is that sometimes you're just going to have to make a decision in which there is no. And because of that, it actually made me a pretty decent supervisor when I was one.
That's awesome because I know that's a big challenge, right? When it comes to whether it's static or guild drama, right? And a lot of people that they like to avoid it, right? I don't like the drama, I don't want the drama, so I'll just avoid it. But it doesn't necessarily go away, right? Just ignoring it doesn't actually necessarily change anything. So it sounds like that's what kind of came to a head, right, with you is to say like, all right, this individual keeps coming and is not performing and to the point that you have to do something. You can't just ignore the problem because otherwise you won't progress, right?
Yes, sir. And I try to treat any raid group like a workplace because ultimately that's kind of what I view it as. We're all here for a specific objective. At least that's my mentality with it. Not everyone has that mentality, and that's okay. Um, I try to just focus on the objective because at the end of the day, I just want to get my shinies.
Yep, I mean, that's why we're there, right? It's to have fun, but it's also to get the gear, to get the loot, get the cool stuff, right? So
Yes,
absolutely love
sir.
that. And so I could share one of the it's a great example too because I have a story from my own experience of playing. So I've played Final Fantasy, I'll say off and on since I guess since well, I say I started the 1.0 as well. So for those that know the debacle that was 1.0, but only played probably for the first month and then quit out after that because I was one of those people who's like, oh, this is not a good game. And then they rebooted it with AR, and I came back and been on and off since. But so before that, or in those in between years, I played another MMO, Star Wars: The Old Republic, if you've heard of that one.
Okay.
And it's very interesting, very fun that you tell that story about having that individual that you had to let go, because we had a very similar experience, when I led the raids in Star Wars. And in SWTOR, we had a situation where we had this in-game rating, and there was an individual that we brought along, and the classes were a little bit more wide disparity, right? There was very clearly much more overpowered classes than say there are in Final Fantasy. So the Marauder, as it was called, was this dual lightsaber wielding guy. For those that ever played, they know that this is the guy that just you could be terrible at the class, but you still like were 30% more damage than everybody else. It was just dumb. So we had to bring these guys so we had this one individual that we kind of had to, right? It was like, I guess we'll bring him because he performed well, sort of, that he did all that damage because he was this overpowered class. But kind of like what you're saying, he was always late to raid, and he was just kind of mucking around, and you're like, what are you doing, dude? We're trying to raid. And we had another individual that wanted to come in who was, I think, the sniper class, but it was so good damage but not quite as high. But so we're talking about a guy that was waiting, kind of like waiting in line. He was like, I would like, because he played with us a little bit before, and he was like, he wanted to play with us. He thought, this is a great group. I want to be a part of it. He literally sat outside. This is a game where you have to like physically, virtually in the game, go to where the raid is, and he would sit
Hmm.
outside the door where the raid is, waiting for his turn to get in. Like that's how dedicated he was. Meanwhile, this Marauder, again, no names, but this Marauder was off doing his like daily quests 15 minutes late to the raid. And we're like, what are you doing? And then finally had to make that decision there on the spot because it had not been the first time. But sure enough, it was a point where it was like, no, sorry, we got to let you go. And then we brought in the sniper guy, even though he was a quote, less powerful class, still outdamaged the other guy because he knew his class, he knew his stuff, he knew his rotation, and he did amazing. We kept him after that for sure. So it's amazing what you could do when you finally have those, decisions, right? So yes, it sucks to have drama, it sucks to have conflict, but you can learn so much and actually improve as a result once you get past it, right? So,
Absolutely. In
so
my,
I love that
Go ahead.
example. Yes, go ahead.
In my current career, I work with an individual. Love her as a person, but this individual has driven away, I want to say, seven of her previous colleagues. And I actually do genuinely believe that through all the experience I've had leading raids and dealing with, let's say, disparate personalities, that it's given me the tools and the patience I need to be able to handle someone that is as particular as she is.
Nice way to put it. Yeah.
But I do genuinely understand what you mean about having to ultimately just make a decision to choose the individual that, although they might perform slightly less damage or play a job that's slightly less meta, that you might have to ultimately make the decision to bring them because ultimately it's about, is this player, is the person behind the job going to be, I call it jobs, but obviously in Star Wars it's a class. Sorry for that.
Yeah. Same difference, but yeah. But
I I do understand that ultimately it's a question of, is the player behind it going to bring in any problems into the raid versus the job that he's playing.
yeah, exactly. And so I think a question that maybe some of the gamers have is that, okay, so maybe they understand, okay, I have to have this discussion, or I have to, that there is a conflict here and I can't just avoid it. I can't just ignore it. But you'd mentioned one thing that I think a lot of people might be curious about is like, how do you have these conversations? How do you be impartial, like you said?
That one I actually had to learn the hard way. So the biggest piece of advice I can give for anyone both in their personal lives and in raid is focus solely on facts and make sure you have all of them. Any decision I have ever made, I tried to make data driven. I tried to have evidence of with both our poll records and also our VODs from the polls. I try to make any decisions I have based on that, and I try to make any decisions I have at work based on our performance records as well.
Gotcha. So it's really
So
just so bring receipts, as they say, right? But
I
really, it's
wouldn't even say necessarily just bring receipts, but also take into account any factor. And my apologies for interrupting.
no, no, absolutely.
Um, I wouldn't even say just bring receipts, but I would also say account for anything they might have going on personally. Is this a temporary problem? Is what I like to ask myself. Is
Hmm.
this a fixable problem? Is this a problem that can at least be mitigated in some way, shape, or form? And lastly, and most importantly, and I know this one sounds almost a little mean, but at some point, reality does have to set in. Do they have a history of this?
Yeah, because that's it's unfortunate because yeah, I mean, there's some people that you can help. There's some people that are teachable, but the people that are not willing to learn, that are not willing to change, that are not willing to really give anything in that or be flexible, I guess is the point. That it's just unfortunate that you have to kind of let those people go and actually get people that are more willing. Because that's something I've learned myself, right? Raid leading as well is that it's not necessarily the people that are the best, right? You don't need the best people, but you want people that are teachable. Like we can, and it wasn't always the best gear, right? That was back in the day of like SWOTOR and especially like WoW too. It's like you had to have like the gear score, right? It's like, oh, well, if you don't have this much gear, you can't come with us. It's like we didn't care about the gear. We can get you the gear. And even if you didn't have the necessarily skill at the moment, are you teachable? Right? Because then we can actually get you to that point that you're going to be a great player.
When I was a quality assurance supervisor in a past life, I had a mentor that actually touched on something similar to what you had just said. He had said that all performance issues break down to three issues: a people issue, a training issue, or an equipment issue. And he said the last two can absolutely be solved, but a people issue is up to the individual to solve. So you always want to find the individuals that are not only teachable, but willing to be taught.
That's so important. That's a very key one because if they want, yeah, if they want to grow, if they want to change, it's gonna, I'd say, frankly, it's gonna happen. It might take time, varying times depending on the individual, but that willingness, that openness is just so powerful the people that are yeah you see that stark contrast, right? The people that may in fact be like good players as in like they know their rotation, they can do certain things, but if they're not willing to learn or to grow, right, they'll just plateau. And then you like maybe like what you had in the ultimate raid where it's just like you get to a certain point where it's like, well, there's it's just a wall, it's just a ceiling that you just cannot cross because of that situation.
I agree. I think the biggest skill that I've learned from rating that I apply virtually every day and virtually every day in my personal life is focus and consistency. Um, at the moment, I'm trying to study for the CompTIA A plus, and after that, a few other certifications for IT so that I can fully transition into what I want to do for a living. And I have had to learn to set my, much like I would learn to set for studying for RAID, I have to learn to set myself, okay, I've got X amount of time that I'm not doing anything with during my workday. And I so shouldn't admit to this, but I can get up to like 20 minutes at a time where I'm not doing anything. So I'm like, all right, let's whip out Udemy and let's get some studying done. But it's that little
Yep.
bit of consistency throughout the week that gets me up to an additional 5 hours of study. And it's little things like that that can get you more prepared for raid or more prepared for an important meeting or even more prepared to take an exam that you're moderately terrified of.
That's yeah, there's definitely yeah, a lot going on with getting tests, getting trying to get those certifications. So I definitely feel for you there. That'll be it's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. I've gone through something, not that one, but something similar. But it's like wow. But once you get to the other side of it, it's going to be fantastic. So kudos to you for that one. Uh, so one of the things that I know as far as a question mark on that is okay. So I want to be focused. I want to be consistent. Okay, walk us through a little bit more on that and tell us more as far as like how again like I want to be focused. I want to be consistent, but I can't. What do I do?
Sure. So the biggest thing, and mind you, I come from a history of being very not focused and very not consistent. So I had to kind of teach myself all of this. So mileage may vary, but this is what worked for me. So, in regards to being focused and consistent, no, the most important thing that I found for me was brain food. Foods high in protein, things like that, your caffeine, and I think ultimately also setting habits that and affect RAID and work, like getting enough sleep, making sure you're getting a good amount of exercise, making sure you're taking periodic breaks. Because the biggest thing that a lot of people do that I've noticed is they'll go absolutely hard in the paint, but they won't take care of themselves as a result. And then because all they're doing is rating, they eventually get burnt out on it without realizing it. So it's just as important to take care of your habits outside of raid or as it is to spend time preparing for it. And in order to actually get in the mindset of focus and consistency, eliminating distractions, big time. Anytime I'm in raid, I kick my cat out of the room. I turn my second monitor to something that's black in color so the light doesn't distract me. And I put on a white noise in order to create sort of a mental blank space for me so that all I can
Oh,
focus on is the raid.
oh, very good. I've not heard that one before. So using like a white noise machine kind of thing while you're raiding.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, because I've definitely used a white noise machine. There we go. But for rating, never thought of that. That's actually really cool, really interesting. Because and so I'll say I absolutely get it as far as having that kind of that background noise that kind of avoids the distraction. So that's really cool. Very interesting. So
My
okay,
brain will go after the squirrel. You were saying?
yeah, absolutely. So the other point. So I guess I want to dig in more on the consistency side of it too, because yeah, focused, getting rid of distractions, completely get that's awesome. But how do you do this over and over again? Because, like you say, I mean, we'll get eventually it might be burnout, but at some point it might just be motivation, right? It's like, anybody can do anything for like, a few times. Like anyone can do anything for like 20 seconds. But then after that, how do you continually show up? How do you continually get this momentum going when you're like, okay, well, yeah, it's also like starting habits, right? So like, how do I consistently build this habit so it is actually a habit versus like, I don't like this. I've done it two or three times. It's not working. I'm out.
Sure thing. So the biggest thing for me there, I think, is it depends on whether or not you genuinely love what you're doing. So for me, I genuinely love to raid. I'm currently taking a little bit of a break from it just because I'm too busy for it. But I genuinely love to raid. I love optimizing. I love seeing what I'm capable of. So for me, it comes from a place of passion. This is what I love to do. This is what I like to do. But if it's something you're just okay with, I would say turn it into a discipline. Turn it into part of your daily routine, spending time preparing for it so that you can ensure that for whatever reason, if you enjoy raid, if you don't enjoy the actual content, but maybe you just enjoy hanging out with friends and shooting the shit occasionally, then yeah, absolutely. Turn it into a discipline. And I would say if you have to do it that way, and I'm speaking from a position that I've never having had to do it that way, but I do have several things in my day-to-day work routine that I absolutely hate dealing with,
Right.
mainly dealing with the Department of Transportation. Can't say I'm a big fan of that.
Yep. I
So
can imagine.
for me, in order to turn it into a discipline, I always snuck myself into a little candy bar or something after that as a little treat for saying, you did it, it's over.
And so that touches on something actually really important that I'm glad you brought that up is these kind of little rewards, these little celebrations, right? Because in gaming, I think it's interesting because it's inherently built in, right? Like when you complete a level, you beat a boss, like whatever you do in a game, good games, I'll say, they reward you every step of the way. And you
Mhm.
have these little celebrations, and everybody talks about like the little dopamine hit that you get from the success. But then when we get into the rest of our lives, not really a lot of celebration there. So I don't know if you could expand on that as far as like what have you learned about like celebrating the little wins? Is that something you do? Is that something that you would I guess yeah tell people to do more of?
It's something I'm slowly learning to do. See, I come from a very cynical background, admittedly, where we didn't really celebrate a lot of the little wins, but sometimes I'm kind of learning to be a little more open to that concept. And what I've started doing is, like I said, a small candy bar after dealing with the DOT, that really helped. Um, I also like to, every single day, I like to go out and I like to, once I get that particular thing dealt with, I like to just take a walk and reflect on what did I learn from dealing with this experience. Hey, this experience is over with. I'm done. And let's get ready to move on and enjoy our day. It's all about ultimately saying, okay, this is what I've done. This is how I this is how I feel about it. And I'm just really, and ultimately just really enjoying the fact that you are done with it, that you did do it, and that it's becoming easier and easier to do it day by day. So I would say definitely celebrate the little wins, but unfortunately, I don't have much in the way of valuable information to share there because I'm still learning to do it myself.
No, that's it. I mean, everybody starts somewhere and everybody's a different place on the journey. So I absolutely love that. So yeah, if just to echo that point, and what I've learned too, just to kind of, to give you the advice is just, yeah, the little wins is just, it's so powerful because again, we do it in gaming inherently, or I should say it's built in. So getting out of the game, I think that's where a lot of gamers we've struggled, right? Where it's like, okay, well, what's the goal? It's like, well, I got this big goal I'm going to complete in like a year or something. And then we don't really, like, we might track it. Like there's some people it's like, all right, I have the big goal and that's it. And then they never achieve it because they don't really see the path, right? Because it's like, I see the top of the mountain, don't know how to get there. But then there's some people that track along the way. It's like, okay, well, tracking's good. But then it just feels like work at that point. It's like, all right, well, here's the step, and here's the next step, and here's this next step. And I've noticed what I've seen is that so many people will go through that journey, and they'll get to the plateau, they'll get to like the next thing that they want to do, and it's okay, what's next? And it's like, well, wait a minute, can we celebrate the fact that how far you've gotten? And so many people don't do
Absolutely.
that. And so I would just, if I could give any advice on that, it's just like, yeah, absolutely celebrate the little wins. And I love your example. It's like it could be just a small little tiny candy bar or something, just something that just helps your mind understand that like we're doing it. We're on the right track. We are winning. And that'll help you get to the bigger goal.
I agree. In regards to tracking, actually, I'm so glad you brought that up because there's a very little thing that I do every day before I go to bed. And I So, in regards to tracking and keeping yourself motivated and finding the greater goal, I actually find it very helpful to, uh, and I know this can sound almost like a therapist's advice, but I actually briefly journal the progress I made throughout the day, and I associate it with writing because writing is something that I like to do. So, if you find something you like to do, say maybe it's typing on a keyboard or even painting or something to help you track your goals, then if you associate it with something you love to do, then the task of tracking becomes less tedious, I find.
I love that. Yeah, tracking I think is really important. I bring it up so casually, but it has been very important for me too. Uh, and I
It's
love the
also
idea of
very,
journaling like right before bed. That's something I've done too. Uh, Not necessarily before bed, but just like throughout the day, like just being able to journal on thoughts and what's going on. It is really helpful for those that don't. I would definitely recommend trying to journal just to like get the thoughts out of the head onto the paper because it's really powerful in a way that you can kind of there's something about seeing it on the page that just like really starts to activate other parts that's just like, oh, this is where, like I said, it's the progress, like you said, like this is how far I've come. Or it'll give you other ideas to be like, oh, I should try something over here. So I love that. Tracking, I think, is also important for one other thing. It's just how we get, even beyond just like the journaling portion, but like, I guess more in the business sense, coming from my business background, we were all about metrics. It was all about tracking. But at the same time, I understood the value of it because the mantra that I was taught, really fun little thing was what gets measured gets rewarded, and what gets rewarded
okay.
gets done.
So you probably heard the term KPI quite a bit in your background then.
KPI, oh yeah. Key performance indicators for those that don't know.
I had to submit those every Friday, both on the
Oh.
submitting end and submitting them for my employees end, and they were always so much fun.
We say sarcastically, yes. But at the same time, I mean, we understand. the value of it because it's like, yes, it's annoying. Yes, like tracking some of the stuff is like a chore sometimes, but tracking really does help. And again, it's if you're tracking the right things, that's also very important. And then what do you do with the information? Because I think there's a lot of businesses they either track the wrong thing or they don't do anything with the data once they've tracked it. So being able to act on it, I think, is also really important.
I think in regards to I think in regards to rate in particular as well. The biggest thing that I always tracked, and I always tracked it, and I know this sounds borderline psychopathic, but trust me when I say this works, and it actually taught me about tracking my errors in my own career, because Lord knows I've screwed up. I have screwed up probably about 1,000 times, and I'll probably screw up 1,000 times today. But the biggest thing I always tracked whenever I was progressing anything is I tracked what wipes I caused, and I go back after our session and I cause or and I look at that particular pull and I say, okay, what did I do wrong here? And I think if you're willing to hold yourself just that extra little bit accountable and take things that little bit more seriously, you'll actually find that your willingness and openness to be coached in your personal life will grow exponentially. Because before I started doing that, I won't lie to you, I was prideful, I was arrogant, and even to a degree, I was still kind of am. We're all works in progress.
Yep. Yeah, but I love that point though that it's about being teachable, yes, but and it's about I guess that kind of responsibility, right? To say like, yeah, I screwed up. Like when something is your fault, right? Like own up to it. And because it does a couple things where as far as like it's your integrity, which is also important, but it also makes it so that you are open to that feedback or open to change, open to improve as a result because I so like you said there's definitely I've known some people too that if even if the wipe was their fault they won't necessarily admit to it or they'll brush it off as like again they'll blame it on something else like oh it was it was lag it was oh my keyboard did oh my mouse died or it's like okay but at the same time it was your responsibility can we improve it's like oh no it's a one-off and it's like well the one-off happened again and again and again so
If I may share the single biggest and most important piece of advice I've learned for both rating
absolutely.
and real life, the single most important piece of advice, and I love telling people this, have a sense of humor about it. If you're willing to lambast yourself for your own screw ups, it'll not only non-verbally communicate, I understand what I did was wrong. I understand that accountable for it, and I understand precisely what went wrong. I'm also willing to take responsibility for it. But it'll also say, "Hey, I'm not gonna get angry or be difficult about it. Let's talk." All those things you can communicate subtextually are going to be huge for any regardless of if you're trying to kill futures rewritten or if you're trying to tell your boss, "Hey, I screwed up."
That's yeah, having a sense of humor is great. Is there a story you can share? What's like kind of the biggest screw up, but you've had the best sense of humor about it? What was the funniest screw up maybe?
Do you want a rate example or do you want a work example?
We'll start with a game and and if you want to go further, we'll do that. But absolutely in Final Fantasy.
Sure. So I was progressing Futures Rewritten, and I was trying to get cleared by week 8, which thank God I barely managed to do. I was progressing Futures Rewritten primarily through Party Finder, and we were just getting ready to get through Phase 5, and I was not very familiar with the Tank Buster yet. And for those who don't know, if you're on Tank, you have to aim the Tank Buster in Phase 5. And it is not easy to do if you don't have very good depth perception, unless you do what I figured out and you turn your camera straight up. Well, what I figured out was I was doing it wrong and I was murdering the people in the tower about 6 out of 10 times. And the the first time I did it, I was mortified, but it was progression. It was whatever. And when I got to re-clears and I kept doing it, I'm like, oh my God, something has to change. So the single biggest thing I did, I was still mortified that I did it, but I was getting ready to take the tank buster and my positioning was perfect. Everything was good to go, but I had focused so much on that. I forgot to provoke. So the Buster works like this. You as off tank in particular, you get into either southwest or southeast, or you go slightly southwest to for the initial positioning.
Yeah.
Well, or sorry, you go center for the initial positioning. Sorry, it's been a while, but you go either majorly southeast or just dead center for your initial positioning. Then you either go slightly northeast or slightly southeast, and then and then slightly southwest. But regardless, how it works is it's positioning, then aggro.
Mhm.
Well, what I forgot to do was I was spending so much time focusing on getting my positioning right. I forgot the most basic thing. And I told everyone, listen, I'm very sorry. I came down with a momentary case of stupid.
Yeah, it's there's so much going on in those fights that it's just yes, I love that. And that's why I burst out laughing for those that don't know. It's like, yeah, the ba very basics of tanking 101. It's like you provoke, that's the taunt to get the aggro so that the monster will fight you. So if you miss that, it's like, well, it's fighting whoever now and everyone's dead.
As soon as that boss turned, I and probably about seven other people just looked at it like, I'm in danger.
Oops. Oh, I love that one. Oh, that's a good one. If I could tell one real quick too that I had. So also a tanking story, but this one was so a friend of mine that we were doing SWOTOR together, and for those that haven't played, so the raid was called Denova, and it was the twin tank boss. For those that know that one, it was two stationary like literal tanks, and the swivel mounts on the tanks were the actual like entities that you fought. I guess so the tank didn't move. It was weird. But you're sitting there fighting the two tanks, and the two tanks had to die at the same time. And one of them had this artillery barrage ability, and it would these little ads would come out, and they would deploy these shields, and you had to kill the ads and then hide under the shields for when the artillery came. Well, one of our other tanks. So we've been doing this for like weeks, right? And I think we were on re-clears at this point, so it wasn't like we were progressing or whatever, but like we're just having fun. We're just all right. We got to get through this. Let's get on to the next boss. And I'll never forget. So like I'm tanking the other one, and then I hear on the other side just this eruption of laughter, and I'm like, what is happening? And then everybody dies, and I'm like, what happened? It's like, well, our other tank went under the shield and was trying to fight the other like the units, and he accidentally hit the shield generator, which was targetable, and he basically the class has this like kind of like uppercut punch for the power tech class, and so it was like he just like falcon punched the freaking shield generator to death. We just died laughing because it was like you gotta have the sense of humor about it. It's like, oh yeah, this is absolutely a wipe, but it was in the most epic way possible. Just absolutely destroying your own shield generator. So
I,
go ahead.
in regards to my work experience, so every day so because I work in healthcare, we go by Julian dates instead of calendar dates
Hmm.
because it's easier for us to keep things inventoried. But I had a long history of forgetting to load the current Julian date. So I would accidentally take care of things under the Julian date the day prior. And before in fact, this was actually a relatively recent problem, I'd have to send the I'm very sorry, I'm stupid emails to my boss.
Yep.
And I call them nasty rams because that's pretty much what they are.
Oh yeah.
But I would send these emails to my boss, and I do take the mistake very seriously. I started doing a lot of things and I started changing a lot of habits and routines outside of work so that I could ensure that it doesn't happen. I even wrote myself a note for what the next day's Julian date's going to be whenever I'm leaving work for that night. And
Yep.
I have that ready to go. And thankfully, it hasn't happened in a couple weeks, but I would have to occasionally send my boss the, hey, I'm very sorry, I'm stupid emails. And when my boss finally said, hey, man, what can we do about this? I'm like, you can probably get a brain transplant for you if you want, but I'm working on a few other things right now.
Yep. That's great. And I love that he obviously wants to work through it with you, but at least having enough of a sense of humor to be like, okay, like like the to forgive those kind of missteps occasionally, right? Because we're human, we're imperfect. So I'm glad that hasn't like erupted into something bigger that I know some bosses can definitely do. So hopefully that
My boss, I refer to him as terminally chill.
terminally chill. I love that. It's nice to have those good bosses. I've had a couple good bosses and a few not so good. So definitely appreciate the chill bosses for sure. Well, this has been so much fun. Oh my gosh, we could talk for hours, Johan, but I think we want to at least kind of wrap up this particular episode. So, gosh, thank you so much for being here. This has been awesome. And if people wanted to learn more, I guess where could they find you if they wanted to connect with you, especially Final Fantasy or even on socials?
Sure thing. So I primarily just give my Discord away just because, well, let's be honest, we know how Final Fantasy players can be. So I like to give my Discord away just as kind of an intermediary and then say, okay, if we like each other, let's meet up in game. But my Discord is La Vita Nuova. That is LAVITA NUOVA.
And we'll have a link for you guys in the description below too, so you can check out Johan and the ultimate rating that he does. So very cool.
Thank you very much. It was, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, guys, if you wanted to learn, if you guys want to learn more also about just how you can take these gaming experiences and actually translate it to the rest of your life, definitely hit me up as well. DragonmoreXP.com, and you can go on a little quest there to start your journey into transferring your gaming skills into real life success. So, guys, thank you so much, Johan. Again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being here, and guys, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.
Have a good evening.